Welcome to Picking Bones. Today we're going to talk about The Wire, which is my favorite show of all time. It's a really fantastic show, and it just had its 20th anniversary. So if you're looking for something to watch, this should be it. In this video, I want to talk about some of the lessons that this show has to teach us. Not so much the specific plot beats, so I'm not going to try not to spoil too much of the show for you if you haven't watched it. But I do want to just jump into some of the important things that this show has to teach us. It's a show that really affected the way that I look at the world. It's something that I watched before I really got into my exploration of how the world works. And it had some important things to teach me about that before I got into that. So let's take a look. Starting with season 1, I think one of the really important things that this show talks about is kind of how kids can be forced into the drug trade at a young age. Some people have very few options, and it can be really hard for them to escape this world, even if that's what they wish. So looking at the character arc of Wallace is kind of an example of this. We see over time all of these people, actually, all 4 of these initial characters that we see in season 1 kind of growing to a place where they really want out. But it's difficult for most people to do it. Some people can find themselves a new lifestyle, find themselves a new path, but it can be very difficult. You can get killed, obviously, in the drug trade. Depending how you play your cards, it's a dangerous game that they're playing. One of the more popular, well-known characters from this show is Omar Little. He's a character that President Obama said was his favorite. And in this is a shot from before he goes into a courtroom and essentially tells a lawyer, hey, you're calling me a leech because I rob drug dealers for a living. This guy goes around and he's a stick-up boy, so he robs heroin dealers on the street. But the lawyer is saying he's a parasite. But Omar throws in his face, you're a parasite. You're making your living off of defending these criminals. And it's a scene that I think a lot of people really like. The creators of the show certainly really like themselves, where it kind of feels like, oh, I got you, you scum lawyer. But Omar is a character that although a lot of people like him, I really think he's a scumbag. And in season 1, this is a shot where he's sitting on the stoop selling heroin. So this guy doesn't just steal heroin and destroy it. He's not just like a purely benevolent figure. No, he just goes out and robs drug dealers and then he sells drugs himself, and that's what he's doing. And he gets these 2 individuals killed, and he gets a lot of the people that he interacts with killed. He's living a lifestyle that's valueless and terrible, and not just valueless, it's actively hurting those around him. It's incredibly selfish, and there's a character in the show, Bunk, that actually calls him out on a lot of this. He's an interesting character, certainly, but not at all a heroic one, which I think a lot of people would try to say about him. Let's look at season 2 of The Wire now a little bit. Season 2 is the season that most gets into larger scale issues, not just looking at how the city, all these things are connected in the city of Baltimore, but looking at a lot of these problems come from higher up. So I know it's a small image here, but I shouldn't. All right. Anyway, you can see here it says Talco Shipping, Bruce Diabago, Pyramid Incorporated. So Pyramid Incorporated is the name of the front company that we see in The Wire Season 2. So this Season 2 focuses on how the drugs are brought in to the cities through the ports. And it's a season that a lot of people feel is kind of out of place. It feels very different from the rest of The Wire, but it's especially important to understand some of the larger powers at play in the drug trade and allowing what allows all of this to go on. And it even shows in the show that they were on to the real power players bringing in the drugs, but these power players are protected by the FBI and allowed to continue bringing in the drugs, allowed to continue doing what they're doing, because a lot of these people are assets or informants for the alphabet agencies. And there's this gross corruption particularly at the higher levels of law enforcement. So the show doesn't really get into like the Illuminati, like Freemason type stuff. It doesn't ever get into exactly who the higher powers that be. But having this company called Pyramid Inc. and they kind of show you a bit of how the feds can be involved in this type of stuff, they certainly allude to the larger aspects of what's going on and the powerful individuals behind a lot of it. I have no idea what David Simon and and the creators of this show actually think about in terms of global conspiracy, but they certainly reference things a little bit there with the name Pyramid Inc. And so that's you see kind of the Greeks, they're called, and their interactions with just the local Baltimore dealers, and important part of the show. So another character that we have is Lester Freeman. He's a great character in the show, very intelligent, and he a lot of the kind of iconic lines and catchphrases that you remember from the show come from this guy's mouth. One of those is the bigger the lie, the more they believe. And we kind of see this idea. Hitler spoke of this idea like using where a lie is so big that people can't accept that it's a lie. Which, if you understand anything about the actual history of the world, like you understand that this happens again and again, that the way that people commonly view history is built on these big lies, these massive lies that are so much is structured off of these lies. And so to acknowledge that one of these lies is a falsehood, one of these lies that's become a pillar of your worldview is a falsehood, it's so difficult to accept. It's so difficult to knock down that pillar because it's foundational. So this concept of the bigger the lie, the more they believe, I think it's really interesting, and it is mentioned in the show. Another really interesting thing that The Wire gets into is just looking at the technology over time. It's really cool to see, like, they were using payphones, obviously, and then as cell phone technology developed, police had to come up with new ways to try to figure out how do you set up a wire depending on what level of technology people have. And that's just a really interesting thing to see how that developed over time. These are the creators of the show. Season 3, looks at the legalization of drugs, and I think it does. It's really pretty fair in how it approaches this issue. I think that a lot of the people involved in making the show would lean towards that's the best way to proceed as a society, that we should just legalize all drugs. Um, I disagree, and I think that they approached this issue though in a relatively honest way. They looked at the potential good things that could come from that, such as de-escalation of violence, um, taking away the reason for these gangs to fight each other. But it also looked at the horrors it could create if you create like a drug-free zone, and just like how many people could overdose, like how vile of an environment you really can create, where anything goes, and truly it results in something ugly. Um, so I thought it was really cool how this season looked at this issue, and I think a lot of the issues the creators might have their stance on things, but they aren't ramming that stance down your throat throughout the show, which is always appreciated. Season 4, my favorite season, I think a lot of people regard as the best season, looks at how kids are brought into the drug game, how young some of these kids are, and like how rough it can be for some of them, and how hard it is to get out of the situation that they're in. Michael's story is especially tragic, but I don't even want to ruin it for you. Check it out. It's a great show if you've never watched it. um, One of the coolest things that we see in this show is the arc of Carver. Carver is a bad cop at the start of the show. He's an abusive, corrupt cop. And yeah, over the course of time, we see him develop into a fine officer who really cares about his community, who really wants to help get kids on the right track, and away from these gangs. And he's doing his best to help better those around him. And this is kind of one of the things that I think, comparing this show and how it's looking at these issues compared to like how these issues are being discussed today, it's crazy, because you look at a cop like Colvin in the show who does something at the start of the show that you could be fired for. It's police brutality. Like, that could be the end of somebody's job. But over time and through good training and good superior officers, he's develops into a fine officer himself. People make mistakes. People fail. And sometimes they need time to learn from those mistakes and to be pushed into doing better. But that's not going to happen if we punish people immediately for every failure they make. And yeah, I just think that's an interesting discussion in this show, where the creators clearly recognize like cops can be corrupt and terrible, and some of them need to not be cops, but others might have failures and then develop to be some of the very best cops. And this is written from the experience of the writers. It's not just a story. Like, most of these characters in this show are based off of real people or conglomerations of real people. But it's important to remember, like, redemption is a thing that exists in society, in our world. People can get better, and often it takes failures. It takes stumbling and falling, and getting back up to become who we can be. So Carver's got a great arc in this show. Another fine arc is that of Cuddy. He's an ex-con who kind of gets out of prison, is released, and doesn't know what to do. Kind of finds himself getting back into the game. but isn't it's really not for him anymore. He realizes it's not something he can do anymore, this violent lifestyle, and he instead tries to help get kids out of it, trying to get them out of selling drugs and into something that can be productive. So he starts a boxing gym, and it's just a great arc to see. But another interesting aspect of Cuddy's character is that he's a bit of a player, and he's hooking up with all sorts of women who are looking at him like, oh, this guy's strong, and he's helping these boys. He's a good man. Like, a lot of these women are interested in Cuddy, and he certainly takes advantage of that. And eventually, he hooks up with the mother of one of his kids that he's helping in the gym, and it really pushes this kid away. It makes this kid who was starting to get off the streets reject Cuddy because of how he kind of used his mother, and he jumps further into the game. He jumps further into selling drugs because he feels kind of pushed away from Cuddy. So Cuddy, in this case, although he's been helping a lot of kids, he kind of pushed this kid further into the game, and he recognizes this and realizes that he needs to rectify that behavior. And I really love these arcs in The Wire where you kind of see these redemptive stories, and these stories where these characters recognize just how much their actions are impacting those around them. It all matters. And this is something that Carver eventually realizes by the end of the show. And he has this conversation with his old partner, Herc. And he's talking about how, Herc's failure in the past, it echoed out in massive ways. It ruined a kid's life. It ruined cases. It ruined a great deal. And so Herc's kind of saying, remember these events. Like, it mattered. It all mattered. Like, all of these things that we've done, all these stupid little things that we thought were just this game that we're in. No, it all matters. And it echoes out in ways that we couldn't have realized. And this is really one of the most important lessons that The Wire has to teach us, that all the pieces matter and that it's all connected.
Non-pertinent. How do you log that non-pertinent?
No drug talk?
They use codes to hide their patron phone numbers. And when someone does use a phone, they don't use names. And if someone does use a name, he's reminded not to. All of that is valuable evidence.
Of what?
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy?
We're building something here, Detective. We're building it from scratch. All the pieces matter.
This show, this lesson, like, of all the pieces matter and that it's all connected, really affected the way that I started to look at the world. And when I started to really try to piece together why is this world so corrupt and broken the way it is, this was a vital lesson to me. You can't understand just look at one aspect of anything and expect to gain a proper understanding. You need to look at a multitude of subjects and interconnected issues to really get a proper understanding of anything in the world. And yeah, to me that was just a really valuable lesson that this show kind of drilled into my head. And this makes me think of another show, one of my favorites, called Deadwood. I'm not going to show the clip here, but this priest kind of gets into 1 Corinthians 12, where we see the story of one body but many parts. And this part of the Bible, it's talking about how there are many. We're all connected to the same body as Christians. There's one body, but it has many parts. But all its many parts make up one body. It is the same with Christ. We are all baptized by one Holy Spirit. And so we are formed into one body. It didn't matter whether we are Jews or Gentiles, slaves or free people. We were all given the same Spirit to drink. So the body is not made up of just one part. It has many parts. The main character in this show, Deadwood, Seth Bullock, is really not wanting to step up and do his part that he is meant to do, what he is meant for, what perhaps God's purpose for him was, which is to be a protector of his society. He was fit to be a sheriff. He was fit to pursue justice on matters when there wasn't anyone around to do so. And although Seth just kind of wanted to live his own life, this priest was kind of trying to get into his head that, no, you have a part to play, and we all have a part to play. We all matter in a different way in society. His part was to step up and be the sheriff, but everybody has a part. All the pieces matter, and we are all pieces of society. I'm connecting ideas that I know are not fully connected, but to me it makes sense, and I hope it does to you too. Let's look at this gladiator clip.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Everything we do matters. You might be just working as a store clerk. You might be a janitor. You might be any job that you feel is not significant. But that's where you are now. And maybe you do have a future acting as a different part in society. But maybe that, like, you are in a place that you are because you have something to offer there. It could be something that you couldn't even comprehend. Something that I try to live by, but I might not really do it as well as I'd hope, is that you can change the world with a smile. I heard the story of somebody talking about how they were thinking about killing themselves, and somebody came up to them and said, "Hey, you're this person, aren't you? And what you said here, it really helped me. I really appreciated it. It meant a lot to me. Thanks a lot." And that kind word in that moment literally saved that person's life, who was on the verge of potentially killing themselves. You never know. There's that kind of cheesy phrase like, you don't know what everyone's going through a battle that you don't know, that you see, so be nice. It's cheesy, but it's true. Like, you have no idea what those around you are dealing with, and you also have no idea how you might affect them. Like, the smallest of actions can affect people in the biggest of ways, particularly if someone's in a very dark place. The slightest bit of encouragement or kind word or even a smile, it can really change someone's day, which might even end up changing their life. You don't know the impact that you can have on people. So we all have a responsibility to be joyful and to be our best at all times. All the pieces matter. It's all connected. I hope you got something useful out of this video. I know it's not the normal stuff we dig into on this channel, but thought it was a cool one to come back to. I love The Wire. It's a great show. I highly recommend it. This seemed like a timely time to talk about it. That's definitely how I should say that. But yeah, this is going up unedited because that's how I like to do my videos. So I'm back though, guys. I apologize that I've been gone for so long. I'm gonna keep making videos again though. This is me coming back. It's not just gonna be the one. I want to start doing this regularly again. I never intended to take so much time off, but that's what happened. But I'm back now, guys, and I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you on the next one. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.